Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America.
I am Don Mazzella. My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but all the way from England is one of the more interesting people we've had in a long time, Brian Marcel. He's written a book, but more importantly, he's done some amazing things in his life. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Don. Great to be here from the other side of the pond.
You know, that's a big pond, and if anybody's ever been on it, it quickly becomes a terrifying thing, but you're absolutely right. But Brian, tell us a little bit about your background and then eventually about your book.
Well, sure, Don, please do. Well, I started my career in the London Stock Exchange, actually. But it's kind of an institution, so it didn't suit me, and I actually got fired. It was my grandfather's firm, so it was a bit embarrassing at the time. So I went into industry and started selling papers, printing papers and various other things. Sent to South Africa as a salesman to spend about 8 years there, learned sales and marketing. And there I met my wife, Liz, who sadly died of breast cancer 12 years ago. But when I got back to the UK in 1978, this was in the early days of barcoding. So I started my own business selling what we call film masters, which is just little bits of artwork with a barcode on it for printing barcodes on products. But as we expanded, I needed to look for different markets. So I looked around and thought that the Berlin Wall, our relationships with Russia had improved a bit towards the end, what with your President Reagan and our Maggie Thatcher at the time. So it looked like the Berlin Wall might fall and open up some Eastern Bloc markets. So it did in 1989, and I went in there and set up some businesses and some joint ventures. And we went on from there, basically. 36 years on, we're still going.
Mm-hmm. So after all of that, you decided to write a book.
Well, the thing is, we have a trade association called the AIDC 100, which is actually based in the States, because most of the founders of barcoding, or as we call it, automatic identification, set out in the States, as so many of these good things do. And there aren't many of us now. Well, a lot of us have been dying off, sadly. And so there's a lot of pressure to write memoirs to sort of, keep a record of the early days and that kind of thing. And I suppose I was under pressure for many years to write my memoirs because not many people have. Finally, I did, as you could see, but it was a bit of a difficult one because the older you get, you wouldn't know about this, Don, but your memory starts fading a bit. And I was quite concerned that I wouldn't remember anything, nor that I'd actually be pressurized by deadlines to put pen to paper. And it was only when I came across this lovely lady called Nancy Erickson from St. Louis, who called herself the book professor, but she had a nice book writing process and was going to phone me up every week with deadlines. That actually pushed me into doing it, and it took a couple of years, and we released it in September of this year.
Well, what's the name of the book?
It's called Raise the Bar, Change the Game. Sort of a pun a bit on barcodes, raise the bar and change the game. And the subtitle is The Success Primer for Budding Entrepreneurs Who Want to Change the World. Because I think we did change the world, or we still are, with barcode solutions. Business wouldn't really operate these days without barcodes. Certainly, people. I know Frank Smith, I think his name is, from FedEx, once said that he couldn't operate without barcodes. And all these courier companies and retailers, they can't operate without barcodes anymore. And that's great for us.
I love the title, by the way. It's a great title. And as you were talking, I had so many thoughts running through my mind. But I guess the first one I'll ask, what are some of the, in your book, what are some of the things that you say to entrepreneurs they should do in order to change the world?
Well, of course, first thing to do is to decide whether you're entrepreneur material or not. And that's where it all starts. So I always advise my mentees to decide what kind of risk they're prepared to take on a scale of 1 to 10. And kind of anything much below 7, I would advise them not to start because, you're going to have lots of knocks, ups and downs when you start your business, and indeed throughout its shelf life. And you've got to really be prepared to lose your own money, certainly in the first year or so before you make any. You could be sitting there without any money coming in at all. Through the life cycle of the business, you're going to be making some pretty risky decisions in order to grow your business, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're risk averse. And that means also that you need a huge amount of self-confidence and self-belief to see you through all of this. So if you're kind of that mentality and you're ready to take the plunge, there's no reason, why you shouldn't change the world if that's what you want to do. But you can build a brilliant business without changing the world. Because at the end of the day, you want to change your life for the better, and you want to make a lot of people happy and change their lives by giving them a job. So even just doing that is fantastic, and you should be very proud of that. But if you set off with an idea to change the world, that's not so easy, because you've then got to come up with an amazing idea that people haven't had before. Although, to be fair, barcoding wasn't an original idea when I started. I think the first retail barcode, as we all know, it was around about 1975, and I started in 1978, 79. So people were already putting in barcode systems, but I think the key is to try and do it slightly differently or better than anybody else. So basically, Don, I just tell people, don't worry about what idea, if you're stuck with having an idea, don't say, okay, fine, I'm not going to start a business. Just come up with something that you can do better than anybody else, and then you can really make that fly.
That is absolutely great advice. When you said earlier about are you willing to take risks, I always say entrepreneurs are those that are willing to jump off a cliff and hope somebody builds a pool before they land. But
Funny, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
but
make
it's
sure
true.
there's water in the pool, though.
But you entered an industry that was rapidly expanding.
Yeah.
And you concentrated on the Eastern European, if I got it right. Am I correct?
Yes. Well, the UK to start with, but a few years later, yes, Eastern Europe.
But it took the ability to recognize the potential of barcoding that sets you apart from your contemporaries. Would you say that?
Yes, and also I think risk, once again, was a big factor because I took the risk to go into a block of countries that, if you think about it, nobody was really allowed to travel in without sort of strict visas and everything. Certainly, people from Eastern Europe weren't allowed to travel into the West. So there was this wall everywhere, basically. And so it was kind of going into, I call it forbidden territory or tasting forbidden fruit. You kept thinking of Russia and spies and the Cold War and all this kind of thing, secret police, KGBs. So to actually go in there when you don't know anybody and sort of root around to try and find some people to do business with before barcodes were even really thought of, and most people thought I was totally mad. And actually, I guess I was, looking back, because it took me at least 7 years to make any money there. You had to really improvise. For example, I didn't sell any barcodes really for a couple of years because they didn't really know what they were. So I was finding things to sell. I sold banknote counting machines in Russia. I sold domestic cable that I had made in a Russian a manufacturing plant. I sold carbon paper in Hungary and cassette ribbons, if you can remember that far back. All trying to make a buck, really. And so yeah, it was challenging. So if you think about that kind of background, there aren't many people really that would want to do that, I think.
You're making it sound interesting. I'll tell you how old I am. I got kicked out of Prague during the Prague and the spring of '68. I was the last Western reporter in Prague.
Oh, you're kidding! That's fantastic. Were you? Oh, I'd love to hear your story one day, Don.
No,
maybe.
But we're here to hear. We're here to hear your story today. But no, when you said about the KGB, etc., I still had 40 years later my suitcase still at the Prague hotel. Anyway, I'm sorry. I said Prague. I meant Budapest.
Okay.
The Hungarians. I was in Prague, but I was kicked out of Hungary. You know, when just before the Russian tanks came in. So, which tells you how much my mind's going. You know that old joke about how you know you're getting old? 3 ways. First way is you begin to forget things, and I forget the other 2.
Okay.
But enough about me. Let's talk about you. You know, you say about you sustain losses and tried to do things for 7 years. What was your final breakthrough to start to make you money?
I think the Eastern Europeans, once the war came down and they tried to make their markets free, they therefore had to, or wanted to, export their products to the West, which was an obvious first move. And if you think about it, we're talking 1989, 1990. So barcodes were quite well established in the West by then. And certainly no self-respecting supermarket would accept any products from anybody that didn't have a barcode on. So that put pressure on these guys to put barcodes on their products. And that's where I came in. And I had a machine, a plotting machine made by Marconi, and I had my own proprietary software which would make these barcode film masters, these bits of film artwork that the printers would use to print on their products. So that was quite a lot of money to sell that, which gave me the working capital, if you will, to start running these joint venture companies that I had started to set up in 1990. And then, of course, people, as the supermarkets wanted to set up their own scanning system so they could use the barcodes internally. And people like, I think it was Kmart. Remember Kmart? They came over to Prague in 1989, 1990, I think. And then they started putting pressure internally on local manufacturers to produce products with barcodes on. And then it started escalating from there. I mean, not a rocket takeoff or anything like that, but just slowly, it gradually took traction, and it just kept growing. And we were just the first in, pretty much. And I managed to get a really good team of people. I got some fabulous people that I made contact with out there who were just dying to use their entrepreneurial skills to set up a business. So I trained them how to buy, how to sell, how to whatever, and gave them access to all my suppliers, and they just took to it like a duck to water, and we grew and grew and grew. Thanks to them, they're just amazing, and that's how we do it.
Well, then let's talk about that for a second, because you developed ways of mentoring these people. And what did you learn, and what did you teach them? A mentor, a good mentor, is one who has done it all before, sort of thing, right? Who's got the experience, who's had the knocks in business and life. Because you don't want a mentor who knows and has experienced less than you have, because that's totally pointless. Because the mentor is going to be somebody you can cry on their shoulder, ask them questions, get experience, take advantage of all their experience. So he or she, of course, needs to have had a lot of experience. And I'd had, by that time, I'd been going about 7 or 8 years in England, and I'd had quite a few knocks, and picked myself up. And I don't know, I had an aptitude to mentoring people, because I think, the more you run a business, the more you learn how to handle people, and especially when you're handling people who've never been in business before, who've never even experienced business before. It's, you learn pretty quickly how to get them up to speed. And so I would spend lots of time with them, teaching them how to produce a business plan, understanding balance sheets and all that, all these sort of things that are anathema to these people. But when you've got someone that listens to you, who carries out what you say, hangs on your every word, which of course we all like, don't we, Don? So I had a ready audience who were lapping it all up,
So it actually wasn't that difficult to get my ideas across because they didn't know any better. And that was great. So they're the best type of mentee, I think. And I really loved it. I'm mentoring them even today. I mean, there's always plenty to learn. I'm in charge of strategy. So I've got to, make sure we're ahead of the game and keeping abreast of technology and keeping ahead of the competition, basically, and keeping our customers happy.
Well, Brian, I'm going to ask you a question, which is the eternal question. Entrepreneurs, are they born or can they be made?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. They can be born, of course, but I think they can be made, actually, because when you're young, when I say young, it's sort of pre-business, when you're still at school, you're kind of working out your life and your self-image. I believe that your self-image is sort of developed by the time you're 9 years old. And up until that time, you're pretty free with your thinking because there are no rules as such. There's school rules, of course, but they're fairly minor school rules. So you tend to think out of the box. I mean, there is no box. So all your thinking can be lateral and free flowing. So but you may or may not be able to do that. And it depends on your self-image. So once that's formed, it's not, you then build on that with your experience, with your teachers, and with your peers. And then it's that kind of environment, plus your parents, of course. I mean, if your father's a successful entrepreneur, then you've got it made anyway, because he's bound to influence you. And you'll grow up as an entrepreneur because like father, like son. So I think you can develop the self-confidence. You can be, you can see what your peers are up to and be impressed with the success that some of your friends have done and say, yes, I like a bit of that too. So you can motivate yourself and create your risk, how risky you want to go. So, yeah, I think anybody can become an entrepreneur.
We're talking with Brian Marcel. He's written a brand new book. Brian, the name of your book for our audience?
Raise the Bar, Change the Game. Available on Amazon.com.
Well, we're talking here. We have just a couple of minutes left. Brian, if you had one or two pieces of advice to pass on to our audience, what would it be?
Well, I'm assuming the audience either wants to start a business or are in business at the moment. I'd say in the early stages. I don't know if I've got your audience right, but if I focus on that audience anyway, and I apologize for those who are already making fortunes, in which case they don't need my advice anyway. I think definitely hire a mentor for the reasons I said earlier. You won't regret it. You must learn to read a balance sheet, profit and loss, and the cash flow statement especially, because cash is king. People make mistakes. They think all you have to do is make big money on the top line, make a lot of profit, and you're away. But if your customers aren't paying you for the goods you've sold them, you're going to run out of cash. And it can actually hit you quite quickly without you realizing it. That's what happened to me in 2000, and I talk about that extensively in the book. And in fact, my book isn't all about my successes, it's all about my failures as well. So I like to try and keep it balanced and show what I've learned from it and pass on that wisdom to the reader. I think you need to produce a vision. What is the point of your business? What's in it for me? The customer, not what's in it for me, the businessman. What's in it for my customer? Why on earth am I interested in your product? So you have to work out what is the big story, what is the one big thing that you're offering. And to do that, you need to produce a business plan. So many companies fail because they don't get a business plan. In fact, 50% of companies only survive 5 years. And I think that's one of the main reasons. They don't know where they're going. They haven't got the direction. So produce a business plan. It need only be one page. I show you how to do that in the book. Learn people's skills. I've mentioned that. But have a positive mentality, a can-do attitude, right? Your self-confidence. You can't be thinking negative thoughts, and don't surround yourself with negative people either. There are going to be so many people in your circle that will tell you you can't do this, you can't do that, and all the reasons why not. Just don't listen. Just battle through and believe in yourself. Raise the bar, change the game. Available from Amazon.com and .co.uk if you're broadcasting this in my neck of the woods. www.brianmarcel.net. BRIANM for mother, ARCEL.net. That's my personal website. My company's website, if anybody wants to have a look and see what we do, is called the IBCSgroup.com. I for India, B for brother, C for Charlie, S for sugar, group.com. That's
Brian Marcel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. And thank you, all your listeners as well. All the best.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz. I want to tell you about Bob Bethel. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. Dan Perkins with your featured book.
Welcome back to Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful. Now it's time for Money in Motion.
I'm Don Mazzella. My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we're really fortunate today to have Deb Gabor with us. She's a nationally known branding and retailing specialist. She has a new book, but she's here to talk about small business and the future of branding and retailing. Deb, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, Deb, before we do anything else, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your new book, and the website where our audience can know more.
Sure. So I guess I'd like to consider myself to be an expert on branding and brand strategy. I run a brand consultancy out of Austin, Texas, where we serve businesses of all sizes and all types out of that Austin office, and we work across different industries, and I've been doing this kind of work for about 30 years, and my expertise really is creating these conditions of irrational loyalty between brands and their customers. And what I mean by that is the condition by which customers are so strongly bonded to a brand that they would feel like they were cheating on the brand were they to choose an alternative. So we build the best brands in the world for companies of all sizes. And you asked me about my book. My book is not so new. I'm actually working on another book that's going to come out in the spring, but the book that you're talking about is called Branding is Sex, and I'm not kidding. It's Branding is Sex, S-E-X. Get your customer laid and sell the hell out of anything. And that's a great how-to book that anybody in any organization, really of any size, can use to learn how to build the strategic underpinnings of their brands to start to build those conditions of irrational loyalty. So I hate to say that I've been doing this kind of work for almost 30 years now, and I've probably worked with every kind of company and in every industry, and I've seen a lot of stuff happening. But that's a little bit about me. If people want to find out more about my book, they can go to the website, brandingissex.com, or they can come see me at my company, which is Soul Marketing, and that's S-O-L, like the sun in Spanish, soulmarketing.com.
Well, I love the title. You know, when I was younger, they used to say anything with the word sex in would sell, and but and I think that was. But I'm going to ask you a question out of left field, which is, I've been told and read that brand loyalty is a thing of the past, and that we're loyal to car companies. For instance, in my family, no one ever bought anything but a GM car. But all of that has gone by the wayside. But what you seem to be saying is it ain't so. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, you know, I'll say that, you know, in certain segments of the market where things are becoming increasingly commoditized, brand loyalty is kind of a thing of the past. But brand loyalty, especially if you look at some of the demographic and psychographic changes in our audience, especially here in the United States and the rest of North America, we have certain audiences that are fiercely loyal to brands. The nature of brand loyalty has really changed, and the drivers of brand loyalty is what's changed. So no longer the brand loyalty of the past, which was just if you offered a product at a competitive price, it was available, people could find it, people felt good, you know, about selecting it off the shelf, etc. That was enough for people to just consistently purchase and repurchase goods again and again. Now, the world of branding has changed drastically, where customers, really of all ages and all demographic segments, are looking for brands that show up with a set of values and beliefs that align with their own values and beliefs. And they're making choices, their initial choices to buy brands, not necessarily based on sort of the basics of marketing, which are the 4 Ps, product, price, placement, promotion. They're making their decisions more on a relationship that they have with that brand. This is especially true of millennials and the folks that are the group that's right behind the millennials, the Gen Zers. Who I have a 21-year-old daughter who's just at the beginning of that Generation Z. These are digital natives. These are kids who grew up. They have never known a world without an internet. They've never known a world without an always-on, sort of on-demand news cycle and economy for them. And so their relationships with brands are very, very different. They've watched their parents weather difficult financial times. They've watched their parents, in some cases, you know, be screwed by the man, if you will. So some of those traditional big brands and things like that. So they're really looking to align themselves with brands that match their values and that align with their values. And they're making their choices based on a lot more emotional components than the more cognitive components, which would be things like price and availability and selection and things like that. So the world of branding has really, really changed. It's changed vastly since 2016 when the government and our administration here in the United States changed, just because the guy who's, you know, sitting in the leader's chair up there is like very, very vocal and has made some very strong statements. And this is not a political statement. This is just kind of an observation of the state of affairs. But he's come out for and against various brands, and it's caused brands to have to stand up and show, whether or not they're in support or they're disassociating themselves with something that maybe the president says or some other government leader. So the world has really, really changed, and brand loyalty, like I said, brand loyalty is still there, but the reasons for creating brand loyalty are different. Brand loyalty used to be a function of lowering friction or reducing the challenge and churn of choosing other products. Also, it was a function of, a lack of competition, but people today are literally paralyzed by choice, in terms of the number of different brands that they can choose, the products and services and stores that they can shop at and businesses that they can patronize. So now it's become increasingly important for brands to develop these deep emotional relationships with their customers. Does that make sense?
Very much so. But this program is aimed at small business. So could we now turn it towards how does a small business, brick and mortar, and even more so on the internet, create a brand loyalty? First, establish a brand, and then establish brand loyalty. We get that question oftentimes when we go out and talk to our audience. So I guess my question is, how does a smaller business establish a brand and then a brand loyalty?
Sure. So, I will say this, businesses of every size, especially small businesses, they have brands whether they like it or not. And I always tell business owners, you have a brand whether you like it or not, brand or be branded. You don't want to leave your brand up to chance, and you certainly don't want to have your customers and your audience out there in the external world controlling the narrative around your brand. So you have to grab control of it. And so I can kind of give like a real quick sort of how-to for small business owners to think about developing a brand that can withstand turbulent times, but also, create the conditions, make the conditions right for building brand loyalty over time. And so what I advise companies to do, honestly, regardless of the size, it doesn't matter if, you're a micro business or you're a small, one location retail store, or you're one of the biggest corporations in the world, the process is the same. The first thing that you want to do is really figure out who your brand is for by pointing your brand at what I call the ideal customer archetype, which is an archetypal, almost avatar profile of who your brand is perfect for. Build a profile of, who is our store for? Who are our goods for? Who is our product for? Who is the unicorn customer who is most highly predictive of our success? The person who is the most pleasant to serve, the one who's going to buy from you again and again and again, the one who you're perfect for, and you build the brand for that one person. And then, doing the simplest thing to figure out, okay, so how am I meaningful to that person, requires you to ask a couple of questions. And so I encourage business owners to ask these questions. Once you figure out who that ideal customer is, ask the question of, what does it say about a person that they use our brand? What does it say about that ideal customer that they shop at our store, or that they buy our product, or that they eat at our restaurant? What does it say about them? What that speaks to is this essence of self-expression. You mentioned that in your family that, you never bought anything other than General Motors car the whole time you were growing up. That says something about you, says something about your family members. The things you eat, you drink, you wear, the restaurants you patronize, the soft drinks you drink, the running shoes you buy, the cars you drive, they all say something about you as a human being. And so the second step in branding, after you figure out who are we for, is to ask the question of, what does it say about that person that they use our brand? And then we ask the second question, which is, what is the singular thing that a customer gets from us that they can't get anywhere else? And that's very rarely a feature. And this is usually where branding fails in small businesses, is on this essence of differentiation. A lot of businesses think it's just enough to be different, just to be different. And so sometimes different is just different. It's not necessarily better. So I always encourage business owners to ask the question, what is the one thing they get from us that they can't get anywhere else. A pizza restaurant is a pizza restaurant is a pizza restaurant is a pizza restaurant. And they all may have different ingredients in the sauce, and they may all use like a different shape of sausage, or they might use, they might have just special pies and things like that. But basically the functional benefits of a pizza restaurant are completely undifferentiated. But there's usually a very, very special reason why people go to one particular pizza restaurant again, and again. And the challenge of branding is figuring out what is that one thing. And then the third question that we ask is, which is really, this is kind of the sex question in branding, if you will, is figuring out for that ideal customer, you think about they're trying to tell a story about their life in which all the things that they purchase, the stores that they patronize, the services that they hire, everything that they do is all about telling this story about themselves. And in that story, the customer always gets to be the hero. And so in building a brand for a small business, really think about how do you make your customer the hero in their own story. And so if brands, if small businesses go through this process of building a brand using that basic technique, what they've done is they put their customer into the center of the brand rather than the brand itself, and it changes the relationship with the customer. And so the follow-up question you asked is like, how do you create conditions where brand loyalty can emerge? And it's truly by creating deep emotional bonds with customers so that customers feel like you're absolutely indispensable to them. And you do that by really understanding how you can win over not just their mind and their pocketbook, but their heart. And so, doing the exercise of figuring out the ideal customer and then answering those 3 brand questions is a great start towards making that happen.
That was terrific. We're talking with Deb Gabor. She's with and runs Sol Marketing. Your website again, Deb, before we go any further?
Yeah, sure. It's www.solmarketing.com, and that's Sol, S-O-L, like the sun in Spanish.
Well, it's really interesting, but I'd like to now go a little deeper because I've heard more than once about creating an emotional bond between the provider and the customer. But how do you do that? I know you kind of alluded to it and talked about it, but it's very difficult for me to get my hands around that. You talk about restaurants. Excuse me. You talk about restaurants, and I grew up where restaurants were personified by the owners who were in the front of it, Toots Shores, etc. But how do you do that in brands and like sporting goods stores and other things like that?
Sure. It really is all about understanding how the experience of shopping at that store ultimately elevates the customer's self-concept, right? So think about it this way. There's no other practice in business where we get to use the word love so much as in branding. And when you think about the brands that you couldn't live without, or the restaurants you couldn't even imagine if they disappeared off the face of the earth, that your life would somehow be changed. This idea of emotional branding is, I'll say that it's pretty new. Emotional branding is kind of like the underlying essence of behavioral economics, if you will. People have to have a feeling about something in order to make a cognitive decision. There's actual neurological research and brain science out there that indicates that people have to feel something in order to do something. And so, restaurants today I live in Austin, Texas, and we have a number of I'll call them local and regional chain restaurants here. Austin is a town where we don't particularly care for national chains. They're out by the highways and, they're in the outskirts of town, and people only go there if they're passing through. If you're actually a resident of the city of Austin or our suburban areas, typically when you're making a dining choice, you're choosing a local brand. You're choosing maybe one of our local taco chains, And the particular local taco chain that you choose, we have one here called Torchy's, which, it's devilishly good, if you will, and they're typified by ingredients and menu selections that are a little bit on the irreverent side, right? They're sort of unexpected combinations of food. They have a taco on the menu, for instance, called the Democrat. They have one called the Republican, and then they have one called Trailer Trash, right? And so choice, your number one choice for a taco restaurant in Austin, Texas, is to go to Torchy's. It says something about you as a person. It actually says that you're a little fun, you're lighthearted, you're a little bit irreverent, you might be a little bit of a smart aleck, right? The competing local taco chain here is called Taco Deli. And Taco Deli, they have similar menu offerings. It's a taco stand, right? They're located all over town. Frankly, a lot of these are located almost across the street from each other. But if you go to Taco Deli, which Taco Deli is known for serving tacos that use fresh sort of like farm-to-table ingredients, all organic, local farm foods, interesting, more sort of leaning towards interior Mexican flavors and things like that, then it says about you that you care more about what you put into your body. They don't have silly names like Democrat or Republican or Trailer Trash on their menu. Things are more typified by, they honor the name of the ingredients, huevos rancheros and, frijoles refritos and whatever. And so the interesting thing is, like, you fall on one side or the other. Like here in Austin, we discuss with each other. We're like, are you a Torchy's person or are you a Taco Deli person? Are you a Coke person or are you a Pepsi person, right? Anytime you so strongly identify with a brand that it becomes part of your identity, then you've won at creating that emotional connection that I'm talking about, because the things that we eat, that we drink, that we wear, that we buy, the restaurants that we go to, the companies that we patronize, if we shop at, Joe's Sporting Goods down the street versus Steve's Sporting Goods down the street, it says something about us and our beliefs and values and the alignment of our beliefs and values with the team over at Joe's or with the team at Steve's. Does that make sense?
It does. It's ironic. One of my most favorite restaurants in all of the United States is County Line in Austin.
Right on. So you're either a County Line person or you're a Salt Lick person, right? That's the competing barbecue place here in Austin. And you're one or the other.
No, the other.
There you go. So that's what we mean by irrational loyalty. That's the very definition of irrational loyalty. We have a little company here in Texas called Bluebell Ice Cream. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
Yeah, so Bluebell Ice Cream, they had a listeria breakout in one of their manufacturing plants. Actually, in their main manufacturing plant, they actually killed 3 people as a result of it. And the plant closed down for 2 years while they investigated, they cleaned up the plant, and then they came back on the market 2 years later. And the people in my town here in Austin, Texas, were lined up in front of the grocery store, down the street, around the corner, behind velvet stanchions on red carpets to get into the store so that they could buy 1 gallon of vanilla ice cream when it came back on the market. That's the very definition of irrational loyalty, where people are so intertwined with a brand and have such a relationship with the brand that the brand could kill people and they would still feel like they had to have it. And so it is possible for small businesses to create those kinds of bonds. How do they do that? They do that by making a promise to their customers and honoring it every single time with every interaction they have with their customers.
That's very true. And as you're talking, I'm reviewing the small businesses that I have loyalty to and why. And most of it comes down to customer service. The ability for them to, no matter what happens, I always know they're going to do right by me.
Absolutely. And service, and for small businesses especially, this is what I always explain to small businesses, like your culture, your organizational culture is your brand. Your people are your brand. The experience of doing business with you is your brand. And in small business, you are 100% correct that customer service that is the main touch point there. It doesn't matter what the service or product is, because other people can imitate the service and the product all day long, but the experience of receiving or engaging in that service or doing business with that business is the one main thing that will always, always, always make you stand out. And it is the primary thing that creates those emotional bonds where you feel like you can't take this business away from me. Like, that's a very emotional and frankly irrational way to think, right? And
yes.
The idea for small business is to be relentlessly focused on how do I bond people to me. And so, I use the example of interpersonal relationships all the time. That's where this branding is sex thing comes from. But, if the idea of a brand is to help attract someone to get them into bed and make them the hero in their own story, then, small business, especially those who have been operating for a long time, their job is to keep the wife or husband happy, right? Once you're in the relationship and one of the partners has traded in the rose-colored glasses for a pair of dirty sweatpants, and they leave the bathroom door open when they go to the bathroom at night, and all the things that happen in long-term relationships, it's really easy for those relationships to lose luster. And so in order to create that condition of irrational loyalty where people come back again and again and again, and you have a solid foundation of a relationship that can withstand the most turbulent times, that requires you to make a promise to your customers and deliver on it consistently every single time.
I could not agree with you more. In the time what comes to mind is Nordstrom. We started out as a West Coast, Northwest Coast store, and really made its name on customer service. And to me, I was talking to the manager of the Nordstrom here in New Jersey, and she said that her most difficult task is keeping up the customer service to the standards of the founding stores. And I think you're just validating what she just said. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Nordstrom is a really admirable brand, and they're a big brand. They're actually one of my favorite brands, and I pay attention to them. I actually went online this morning and bought a gift for a client this morning from Nordstrom, had it gift wrapped and had it sent directly to her, because I know that regardless of what touch point I have, whether that's with my personal shopper at my local Nordstrom here or it's an online order that I place via the Nordstrom website, that consistently I'm going to receive not just a great level of customer service, but something that, far exceeds my expectations. I feel like, especially in retail, customer service is something that's becoming really, really commoditized. One of the things that I pay attention to is like retail trends and what's going on in retail in general. And so when you think of a store like Nordstrom, that's a very, very high-touch shopping experience. You can go to the Nordstrom store and you can start in the shoe department and you can work with the same associate and go through the entire store and come up with an entire outfit without talking to anyone else, have the whole thing gift wrapped and sent to your home. And then when you get home, when you decide that you don't like it, you can bring it back, up to 365 days later, no questions asked, right? It's really a beautiful thing. When you think about that all of those features are imitatable. Other retailers are offering similar things. For instance, Walmart and Target now have people roaming the aisles in the store where they can check you out using a mobile payment device, like right there in the aisle, so you don't have to wait in a line, to try to create, more of an experience that's equivalent to a higher end retailer or even an online shopping experience by reducing the friction of actually being in a physical retail store. So it's really easy for brands to imitate each other on the basis of functionality or features, right? There's almost no differentiator anymore. But what is different is it says something about you if Nordstrom is your favorite brand and your go-to brand for retail versus Walmart. If your favorite brand for retail is Walmart, what it says about you is that you value low prices above all, and you're a very, very value-minded shopper, and that's what's most important to you. if you shop at Nordstrom, what you value is selection and, most importantly, high-touch service, because you're probably a very, very different person. And the magic of branding, especially for small businesses, is to identify what kind of person are we for and what is the relevance and role that we play for those people in that life. And then, again, I can't say it enough, consistently delivering an experience to them and continuing to reinvent that experience so that you don't get left behind when everybody else imitates the features and benefits that you're offering.
Deb, you're so right, but I have to tell you something. I'm in New Jersey, and my local Walmart here has employees who do not speak English. And if I go into the Walmart to get something, I have to search high and low for an employee who speaks English in our local Walmart.
Yeah, that's an area I don't want to be too critical of Walmart, but this is an area where Walmart really fails because they have probably overemphasized having the stores fully staffed to the extent that they can sell a volume of merchandise versus providing a unique and differentiated service experience. You may not be the ideal customer for Walmart. Still at Walmart, more than half of the retail transactions that take place every day in a Walmart happen in cash. They still serve the unbanked and underbanked. And their brand promise is the lowest price always. And so the essence of branding is about making choices, right? And so what you experienced there is probably very, very true to the Walmart brand, and a very conscious choice on their part, which is our brand is always about the lowest cost always, and they are about selling volume with low margin. Now, I would expect that if you walked into a different type of retail environment, like a Nordstrom, for instance, I would expect that you would be able to find a salesperson who spoke the same language as you, in addition to salespeople who speak Spanish and salespeople who speak different Indian dialects and things like that, to serve a cosmopolitan audience, because the brand at Nordstrom is built around service, and the brand is built with the expectation that we're going to deliver service. Now, you can buy similar things. A T-shirt at Nordstrom is going to cost you $30. A T-shirt at Walmart is going to cost you, what, $5 or $7? So, the essence of branding, and really why branding is important for businesses of all sizes, and especially small businesses where resources may be constrained, is that a brand allows you to make choices, not just about what you do, but more importantly about what you don't do. So let's say you're a small business and the emphasis of your business is to be the lowest cost retailer of whatever in your town. That means if everything about your brand is about being low cost, you don't enact business practices that drive your costs up and increase your cost base, because it's going to increase the cost of the products that you're selling. And so branding brings this relentless focus to your business when you know, first of all, who you are for, and second of all, what you mean to them, so that you can create this promise and you can orient your brand around that whole scenario. I love branding for small businesses. It's never too late to get started on it. It's everyone's job in the business, regardless of the size of the business, to not just be the developer of the brand, but be the steward of the brand and deliver on that promise all day, every day.
Deb, you have done such a terrific job of explaining branding. I don't think we've heard such a wonderful demonstration of talking about branding than you just given us.
Wow, well, thank you. If you want to learn more about the book or find out, some branding tips and tricks, or some videos and stuff up there, it's branding, or you can go to my company website, which is soulmarketing.com, and that's SOL marketing, soul like the sun. And thanks so much. I really appreciate your bringing me on the show.
Deb Gabor, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.